Hey, what's new, Scooby-Doo is a really strong franchise entry that many people like myself grew up with as the then current series we watched every new episode of as it aired. There are a lot of strong and amazing episodes, but also a lot of very strange episodes, and many that deserve a good look at. I thought we might as well head in for one of those neat little episodes today for something different, and we're specifically headed into the Season 2 premiere episode, originally aired September 13th, 2003, and written by Jim Krieg, who you might know as the one responsible outside of co-developing What's New Here as also the guy responsible for Scooby Natural, or for the entire Return to Zombie Island movie trilogy mess, both of which I have other videos on. This episode is titled Big Appetite in Little Tokyo, and fittingly, it made it into the 2014 compilation DVD, 13 Spooky Tales for the Love of Snack. If it's not terribly obvious, the title of this one is a reference to the 1986 film Big Trouble in Little China, so we're just substituting one Asian location for another, as is very common in American media. By the way, I'm joking since we have to put that disclaimer in the modern climate. And because we're switching to Japan, there is in fact a lot of silly little anime shenanigans to look forward to, as was often in American media at this time as well. Look at these. Let them stare into your soul. Do you not love them? This episode has many references in general to get into, some of which you definitely already know, but maybe some more obscure things as well. So we'll look at all of that as we work through it. Let's jump right in and waste no time. Being a sort of interesting season premiere, this one doesn't have a scene before the opening theme song, instead dropping us right into the song here. As one might expect from the title, we open the episode up in Japan, where this Tokyo-based robotic factory owner Dr. Akira Onodera is working, a spirit flashing behind him, and manifests before him and says the wharf Dr. Onodera wants to build is a threat to their way of life. And if the Ancient One's spirit sounds familiar, it's for good reason, as he's voiced by Mako. If you grew up with animated shows from this era, you know him well, especially as the villainous Aku in Samurai Jack, and the beloved Uncle Iroh in Avatar: The Last Airbender, roles he played up until he passed away in 2006. He of course had a long and splendid career otherwise, but those are the most notable here, and it's nice he got to have one appearance in Scooby during this time as well. Dr. Onodera's voice actor meanwhile is Clyde Kusatsu, who previously had voiced Dr. Zen in Hanna-Barbera's The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest a few years prior. The Ancient One warns that things haven't changed in the village for hundreds of years, but Dr. Onodera tells him he can't hold back progress. The Ancient One says the village has had protection since ancient times, which Dr. Onodera says is only an old legend.
We shall see what is legend and what is real when your accursed factory lies in rubble around.
With that, the spirit threatens this will happen because of a giant creature, which intentionally looks just like Godzilla, which this episode is a general homage to. And just like that, the Doctor is alone. We next are led to this man introducing a big science award. He himself is a very notable reference, as this character, Professor Pomfret, who is voiced by William Schallert, is a reference to the teacher character Mr. Pomfret in the 1959 TV sitcom The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, who Schallert had also played in that series. If you're a huge Scooby history buff, it's very possible you already know where this connection is going. Dobie Gillis was actually a huge source of inspiration for the original development of Scooby-Doo Where Are You in 1969, a decade later, with all four of the teen lead characters in Scooby low-key being direct rip-offs of the cast of that show, respectfully. So having an actual surviving member of the show that Scooby was sort of inspired by is actually a very neat little reference that also doesn't take away as a distractor here, especially to be one of their teachers like in Dobie Gillis. As for the award, Professor Pomfret announces that Velma specifically has won, which has left her child opponent Elliot Blender very upset and angry. Elliot's voice actor might also be familiar to you, as not only is Kimberly Brooks known for characters like Allura in Voltron Legendary Defender, or Jasper in Steven Universe, Scooby fans would be very familiar with her as the voice of Luna of the Hex Girls. Elliot previously appeared in the Season 1 episode Space Ape at the Cape, making him one of the recurring characters of the show. On stage, Velma reveals her winning invention, Dogbot, the world's first fully functional robot canine. Elliot is even more disgusted since he's allergic to dogs, and Shaggy is confused since they have a dog.
Unlike some dogs, Dogbot is incapable of fear.
Damn, that seems kind of targeted. As for her prize, Professor Pomfret announces that they're sending Velma and her friends to Japan to show off Dogbot to robotics expert Dr. Akira Onodera, who we saw at the start. And with their trip beginning, not only do they see Mount Fuji, they also see the old Takamoto movie studio. This is another important reference, as it's named after Iwao Takamoto, who most would call a co-creator of Scooby-Doo, really, was the production designer of the original series, did the original character designs of them that we all know and love, and remained a consultant on much of the franchise for the majority of his life, so this is another very well-deserved reference. The gang are all traveling in this very fancy transport with the professor, who says he studied here with Dr. Onodera years ago. Shaggy can hardly stay awake though, Fred explaining his jet lag. Dr. Onodera meanwhile is highly impressed by Dogbot, though Velma remains modest among his own robotic creations around them. Suddenly the lights go out and the Ancient One appears again, warning that Dr. Onodera himself will become the giant creature he warned him about every night when he falls asleep and destroy his own creations. The spirit tries to blow his magic on him, but Velma calls on Dogbot, who successfully stops it with a pizza. Sleepy Shaggy being unable to help himself, he eats said cursed pizza instead and thus inherits the curse.
Don't worry, Shaggy-san.
Shaggy-san. I can't believe this is real. The good doctor tries to tell Shaggy-san not to worry, and they all are welcomed into his guest house to sleep. Scoob then notices Shaggy is chained to the floor here, which he says is in case he does change into a monster. And despite some amount of effort, he falls asleep immediately, so Scoob tucks him in. And yet, as night goes on, we indeed see a giant Shaggy, a real kaiju, violently walking around. This also is another reference, as 30-foot Shaggy here is sort of calling back to iconic 1958 B-movie Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. As the sun rises, Monster Shaggy retreats, and the rest of the gang wake the boys up alongside Dogbot with breakfast. Shaggy, however, says he's not hungry, shocking even himself.
Let us hope, Shaggy-san, that your hunger was not satisfied last night by devouring the village.
Lieutenant Keiko Tanaka explains and shows that a giant monster smashed everything up in the night, and Velma defends her friend, Shaggy noting that he was even chained up the whole time. However, that chain seems to have been bitten through with large, sharp teeth. As the boys grab some food, Fred officially declares this a mystery, while Velma still doesn't buy this. Even so, there is a giant footprint to have to contend with, and suddenly all of the villagers angrily crowd around Shaggy as the one known to be cursed. Worse, Lieutenant Tanaka makes her way through to say new video evidence has surfaced and that she has to take Shaggy into custody. The gang immediately split, and thanks to Dogbot, make their way onto the top of the bullet train. Jumping inside, Daphne's hair has definitely paid the price. They look up at the TV and realize they have made the news, complete with these how-to-draw manga-ass illustrations of them for reference. They also see Lieutenant Tanaka hovering over them and run off as she jumps in, everyone only escaping thanks to Dogbot, who Scooby is continuing to become more jealous of. And being 4 white kids, a Great Dane, and Robot Dog doesn't help them blend into the crowd either with the lieutenant searching.
Like, could things get any worse?
You should never ask that, Shaggy. Things can always get worse.
We'll be right back.
Get what's new, Scooby-Doo, Volume 6.
Because it's not regular scary, it's Halloween scary.
Get 4 all-new spooky adventures from the hit TV show on DVD.
Ooh,
That's 1, 2, 3, 4 new super scary villains.
yikes!
Go bobbing for what's new, Scooby-Doo, Volume 6 on DVD, and have a very happy Halloween.
Of course, things in fact have gotten worse, as Elliot is also here in Japan, having forced his parents to take him as a consolation, and calls the cops on them as payback. The gang run off into an alley, and leave in these kind of creepy robes, until the little snitch sells them out again.
What do you say now?
Like, sayonara?
Our chase song of the episode is fittingly performed by Puffy Amiyumi, who that same year would perform the iconic theme song to fellow Warner Brothers show Teen Titans, and a year later in 2004 would get their own show on Cartoon Network, Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi, where one member of the fictionalized version of the duo would share a voice with Daphne. The song here is a banger as we get little moments of the gang messing around in Japanese culture. Maybe a little too much. Is this allowed? They all run into each other again and spot a strange-looking hotel, so they decide to check in for the night.
Mr. Smith, Ms. Von Smith, Ms. Smythe, and me, Mr. Shackleman.
Shaggy suggests sleeping safely in the hotel's vault for certain reasons, which the desk clerk is not very sure of, but Daphne gives him her sweet talk and convinces him to let Shaggy stay the night there. The rest of the gang might not be as peaceful tonight, as the hotel has turned out to be a tube hotel specifically, and Daphne even kicks Scooby out of her tube for being too cramped, but it looks big enough to me, I would've let him stay. As Fred reassures him nothing could happen, there's a massive crash, and they find the vault and front of the hotel have been smashed open, and with no more doubt, there he is, the 30-foot Shaggy, who sends his giant foot to crush them. Thankfully, Dogbot yet again saves them from just being absolutely demolished, but giant Shaggy runs off. Thankfully, the sun is coming up, which will turn him back, and over with some trash, Velma wakes him up in his stretched and torn clothes. Daphne packed emergency outfits just in case anyway, so she gets him a fresh fit. He's about ready to turn himself in at this point though, but Velma gets an idea, calling Professor Pomfret. He agrees to help and warns them to be careful, giving them an address to meet at while the lieutenant is secretly listening in. Using a staple and black mascara apparently, Daphne has crafted disguises for everyone but Scooby, the gang arriving at the temple as instructed. They rush over to the professor and reveal themselves, while the lieutenant is waiting and sees through their facade.
All I had was mascara and a stapler.
The professor instructs Dogbot to start popping popcorn everywhere, enough of a distraction for the trio to get out, and for Dogbot to turn into a chariot and whisk Shaggy away. He immediately falls asleep though, and the next thing he knows he's picking up a tiny car as he realizes he has become the monster. Scooby then gets his attention and they tearfully console each other, until Shaggy realizes Scooby is now massive as well, and so are the others. In reality, they're just on a miniature set of Tokyo at that abandoned movie studio, which the others follow Dogbot to, the studio having specialized in films about giant monsters. This seems to exonerate Shaggy, makeup coming off his face and a suit zipping off, but there's still been something destroying things out there. Velma believes they'll find out what if they figure out who ordered Dogbot to come here, and Fred is sure they should start at the beginning. Of course, they head back to the robotics factory, where they spot Elliot kissing up to Dr. Onodera, and making him seem suspicious. But there's no time to think as giant Shaggy pops out. The kaiju smashes around and crushes the factory as it chases the gang around, but Scooby hits the button to turn Dogbot back into a chariot, causing the kaiju to step on it and spin around until it crashes. On its back and smoking, gears expose it to be a giant robot, and Velma takes some of Shaggy's hot sauce to melt off the face and expose Professor Pomfret. Velma hates to admit it, but points out that the monster didn't appear until they did. Specifically, that they were faced with the pre-existing conflict between Dr. Onodera and the Ancient One. The professor saw the opportunity to frame Shaggy when he ate the pizza, and took it. He reworked Dogbot to follow his commands, and had him cut Shaggy's chain in the night and take him away to sell that he really was the monster. Shaggy asks why, and the professor refers to Dr. Onodera, asking why he gets to be rich while he's stuck as an underpaid teacher. Someone's favorite teacher that has disappointed her, which causes him to give Velma a genuine apology for taking her invention and using it for this. And rather than having him say it, the lieutenant gets the meddling kids line without an apology for chasing the gang. As for the Ancient One, nobody seems to have an explanation for his appearance, but Dr. Onodera has decided to follow his wishes and build the wharf somewhere else anyway. And Velma decides to be kind and offer Dogbot to Elliot as a dog he won't be allergic to, and this seems to finally win him over and end their little rivalry, while Velma is still completely satisfied, because ultimately Scooby can never be replaced by a robot.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
And that's Big Appetite in Little Tokyo. This is such an interesting and weird little season premiere. I think what really stands out at the end that we should get out of the way is the Ancient One himself. This is kind of a rare instance of this particular iteration sort of saying that maybe it was a real ghost. Nobody has an explanation. The episode does not offer an explanation. The only explanation we have is that it just had to be real. And this is especially interesting given that the writer of the episode would later go on to effectively ban real ghosts from the franchise because he didn't like the idea of it. Hence the Return to Zombie Island trilogy's controversy I go over in that video. You wouldn't expect to go into an episode that Creek specifically wrote and have the end of the episode conclude that maybe there's at least one ghost that maybe is actually real over here in Japan. Bringing a recurring character like Elliot back also makes for some nice continuity that definitely stood out to me growing up watching the show. And it's interesting that Velma in particular seems to revolve around a lot of those, which I do like. And this episode at least somewhat suggests that she and the gang are of high school age here. One of the few times we actually have anything to lead us in that direction in this particular show. And even then they don't outright say it, so there's still room to say that they already graduated as well. Dogbot is kind of just here to me. He doesn't stand out really as memorable beyond what he does for the plot honestly, even in design. And the lieutenant as a secondary foil to the gang here is an interesting addition. We have the musical chase scene be she and the other cops versus the gang instead of a monster for once. But as an overall character, she doesn't stand out that much outside of it being cool to see a powerful woman. It's really various casting and the references that make this one memorable and stand out. With a Japanese setting, Mako makes the perfect addition to a menacing and powerful character here with the Ancient One, especially with him voicing another creepy supernatural character like Aku at the same time. And as established, Professor Pomfret and his casting was such a neat little Easter egg to be able to do while his actor was still here to do it. But I suppose, for good reason, that the 30-foot Shaggy will be the main thing most people will remember this one for. It's not every day that one of the gang is the villain, sort of, and even less common for them to become a giant supernatural kaiju. It tends to stand out in a lineup, just like the very 2000s interpretation of Japan here. Look into the eyes of these creatures and tell me what riddle they ask. As the premiere of the middle season of the show, this one is a nice reminder of why this was a fun iteration of Scooby to grow up with, and we can't forget the mascara all-black transformation. Have to love these looks, they kinda work it. This episode just has so much going on, it's a busy little bee. Not the scariest villain or the best of the elite episodes, but entirely memorable. I think that's all we have to dig into here, so I won't keep you any longer. I recently put out the last big video covering episodes of the new Scooby-Doo movies if you want to check that out. The Patreon is now live if you specifically want to support the channel. All that stuff. I'll see you when and if I see you. Bye!